Hi everyone. Welcome to another installment of Terrifying Trios. Our theme this time is something that can be hard to articulate, but is essential to people and stories. This time, we'll be exploring identity. Specifically, who are you? Who, if anyone, is allowed to see your true self? Can you trust other people to show you who they really are? And what really makes a monster? Content warning. The following movies and books contain graphic violence, including simulated scenes of death, self-mutilation, death by various tools, including an axe, metal hooks, and a log-splitting saw, the threat of sexual assault, death by cancer, death by gunshot, and more. Viewer and reader discretion is advised. And as always, spoilers ahead. Our first film this month is I Saw the TV Glow, which is a haunting exploration of the relationship between identity and media. Our narrator, Owen, loves to rewatch and contemplate his favorite TV show, The Pink Opaque. It was a show in the 90s that ran on a channel for kids, but it was a late-night Monster of the Week type show that he was introduced to by Maddie, a girl who was in 9th grade when he was in 7th. Owen, a quiet kid with a strict father and a mother sick with cancer, isn't one who breaks rules, but after meeting Maddie, he lies to his parents about having a sleepover with another friend, and instead sneaks over to Maddie's house on a Saturday night so they can watch The Pink Opaque together with her friend Amanda. Owen, like Maddie, finds himself entranced. He later asks his parents if he can stay up past his rather early bedtime to watch it, but his father says the show is for girls, so Maddie begins taping episodes for him to watch. It bears noting here that, perhaps in a nod to 90s TV shows recasting characters with no explanation, the boy who plays young Owen looks rather different than older Owen. The Pink Opaque is the story of two friends, Isabel and Tara, who meet at summer camp, but after the first episode, they're almost never together. Instead, they use their shared power to communicate and battle different threats, whether it's an ice cream monster that's the stuff of nightmares, or the sinister Mr. Melancholy that wants to destroy them both. At one point, when asked by Maddie, when she explains that she likes girls, Owen says, rather than liking boys or girls, that he likes TV shows. He feels that his parents know that there's something wrong with him. He can't explain who he is, but he knows that Maddie's friendship is a vital lifeline. Whether or not Owen is meant to be coded as asexual is left to viewers to decide, but as the movie goes on, we gradually learn more about the gulf between who Owen is to the world and who he wants to be. It's the 1990s, and for Maddie, and Owen too, The Pink Opaque is more than just a TV show. It's also a way to help process the isolation of growing up queer in a small town. For Owen, the fact that his father is white and his mother is black offers another layer of feeling like an outsider in the so-called post-racial suburban U.S. Before she and Owen have finished high school, Maddie, after weeping while watching The Pink Opaque one night, announces that she's running away, and that Owen should come with her. Owen initially agrees, but the next day, he goes to the house of the friend who he's supposedly been staying with on Saturday nights all this time, and confesses what he's been doing, and that he's scared to leave home. Not long after, Maddie disappears. Owen's mother dies from cancer, and The Pink Opaque is canceled. Throughout the film, the barrier between the past and present is flimsy. Owen is thinking and narrating about the show he and Maddie loved for all of its 5-season run. He's also preoccupied with growing up, getting a job, and still being quiet, a person who's overlooked at best, and at worst bullied by his coworkers at the movie theater where he works. He still lives with his father, whose health is declining. One night, Owen is driving home as an adult only to be stopped by a downed power line, with something not quite right about it. There are pages from the episode guide of The Pink Opaque strewn around the scene, and the light illuminating the road is sort of staticky, almost like the light from a flickering TV screen. Then, Owen is at the grocery store when Maddie reappears as suddenly as she disappeared. The two go to a bar, and Maddie explains that Owen needs to trust her, and needs to believe that though what she explains may sound impossible, it's the truth. The Pink Opaque really was more than just a TV show. The reason that she disappeared after running away is that she didn't just leave town. Eventually, after years of feeling lost and adrift, she paid a man she knew from her job to bury her alive. She dug the hole, bought a coffin, and then she got inside. The person she paid didn't check the coffin before burying it, so he at least had plausible deniability about what was really happening. In the last episode of The Pink Opaque, we learned that Tara and Isabel were both caught by Mr. Melancholy's henchpeople. Their hearts were removed, and they were given Luna juice before being buried alive. In being buried herself, after experiencing the horror of suffocation and near death, Maddie eventually emerged from the ground as Tara, her true self. Now she's come back to help Owen, explaining that he's really Isabel, and that to get back to the real world, which only seems like a fictional TV world thanks to the illusions of Mr. Melancholy, he too will have to be buried alive. Then he can awaken as his true self, and Tara and Isabel can go back to fighting monsters. Owen humors Maddie at first, but when he sees the hole that she's prepared for him by their high school football field, he panics and runs, which is understandable. All he can think is that Maddie can't be right. His whole life can't be an illusion. Though there is a time when Owen sticks his head through the basement TV, and his father pulls him out, only for Owen to vomit up what looks like Luna juice. Time passes, and Maddie doesn't seek him out again. Eventually, Owen's father dies. Years pass, and Owen sometimes thinks of The Pink Opaque, but where it once felt thrilling, now it seems cheap and cheesy. But what if Maddie was right? Throughout the third act of this film, you feel a creeping dread that Owen really is supposed to be someone else, and he could be, but instead he's slowly suffocating in a world of illusion. He remembers things, Maddie drawing a ghost on the back of his neck, the two of them walking on the football field, Owen wearing a pink dress. Owen's identity as a trans woman isn't ever fully explored, which makes sense for this character. It seems he can't bear the pain of even fantasizing about who he could be, who he might really want to be, deep down. 20 years pass, and one night, while at work at his job at an arcade/entertainment space, an aging Owen begins to scream. He screams and screams and only stops when he realizes that the people around him have frozen. They don't see him. They don't acknowledge the outburst. And in the bathroom, when Owen takes a box cutter to his chest, light spills out. And again, it's the distinctive glow of a TV screen. But then he tapes himself up and goes back to work, apologizing to people who still don't see him. Then the film ends, Owen's fate uncertain. While the scares here are mostly subtle, this movie will haunt you long after the end credits roll. Yes, there's plenty of frightening imagery, like monsters who want to eat children and people being buried alive. But of course, the real horror here is never being yourself, always hiding who you are from an indifferent world. And perhaps growing up queer in the 90s makes this film a special kind of gut punch for some of us. In one scene, we see written in chalk, "There is still time." And there is. But what will you do with the time you have? I give this movie 3 open graves out of 4. Our next movie is In a Violent Nature, a slasher movie with the unique angle of following the killer for almost the entire film. Both of this month's films are from A24, by the way, a production company known for esoteric projects, not always horror, including the Oscar-winning Everything Everywhere All at Once. We first encounter a locket hanging alone in a forest, and only later learn that it was left in the ruins of a fire tower. A man named Troy takes the locket. He and his friends, all in their 20s, because in this economy, horny teens can no longer afford to rent a place in the middle of the woods, are staying in a cabin nearby. The group leaves, and the corpse of a man named Johnny claws its way out of the earth. Johnny is looking for the locket, and won't rest until he finds it. We follow him as he walks to the home of a man who's been illegally trapping game, and he sees what he thinks is the locket inside. The man, terrified of Johnny's size and appearance, takes off running, only to get his foot snared in one of his own animal traps before Johnny catches up and kills him. Next, Johnny follows the sound of a vehicle. If you like long shots of someone walking in the forest, this may be the movie for you, and I'm honestly not joking. As horror movie plots go, I'd rather have tension built by the killer's gradual approach as an endurance predator instead of watching future victims fight or flirt or shower or insert other horror movie trope. Gradually, night falls, and Johnny watches the group of friends that includes Troy sitting around a campfire. Aaron, who seems to be sort of at the periphery of this friend group, tells the story of Johnny. Many years ago, he was growing up in a logging camp, and hatred of his father caused some men to play a prank on the developmentally delayed boy. He was lured to the fire tower with the promise of toys, but when a man at the top scared him, he fell to his death. Though it was ruled an accident, Johnny's demise was the incident that led to 2 gruesome murder sprees years later, because Johnny's unquiet spirit, when disturbed, will kill until he's put in the ground again. Aaron is the first from the group to die. His friends accuse him of leaving to go hook up with a girl he met earlier at the gas station, and they make fun of him as he walks into the forest, so his absence isn't noticed at first when, while in the woods, using the bathroom, I think, does the rented cabin not have a toilet? He's nearly decapitated by a knife-wielding Johnny. Johnny drags Aaron's body to a ranger station and breaks in, stealing an axe and some metal hooks from a display case, as well as an old firefighting mask, which he puts on. Aaron's body definitely got some laughs in the theater I was in. This movie is a great combination of shocking gore and 1980s-style fake corpses. This one isn't so fake that you're completely taken out of the moment, but it is just fake enough to be funny. Johnny returns to the forest near the cabin the next morning, walking to where one woman, Brody, is swimming in the lake. She invites Aurora, her love interest, to swim with her, but Aurora leaves to practice yoga on a nearby scenic ridge, suggesting that she's limbering up for sex with Brody. We see Johnny's point of view, and viewers will wait with bated breath until Brody is finally pulled beneath the surface of the water. She barely has time to scream before Johnny kills her, and her corpse soon floats to the surface. Aurora's death was the point at which the person sitting next to me in the theater got up and left and did not come back. Using the metal hooks he stole the night before, Johnny kills Aurora, but in stabbing her, he also twists her into a kind of human pretzel. This, for me, is one of the highlights of seeing movies in theaters, hearing the people around you react with horror, incredulity, and amusement. Johnny then throws her corpse into the water below, and returns to the cabin. There, the remaining quartet of friends have begun to argue about the 3 who are missing. Colt and Chris, it should be noted, are dating, and Troy, after stealing the locket from Johnny's resting place, gave it to Colt, who then gave it to Chris, who is now wearing it. During the aforementioned argument, someone throws the car keys into the woods, and Johnny sits and plays with the keychain, a toy car, for a few moments before returning to his grim work. Colt and Chris leave on an ATV, but Troy and Evan are killed in spectacularly bloody fashion, one with a stolen axe and the other with a rock Johnny uses to smash the young man's head. Colt and Chris soon return after finding Aaron's body, but they escape Johnny on the ATV, and Johnny spends the rest of the day pursuing them on foot, his pace the usual measured, implacable gait of the unkillable movie serial killer. That night, Colt and Chris talk to a man at the ranger station. He tells them about the locket, and that the story of Johnny is true. He explains that they'll need to return Johnny and the locket to the fire tower, and when Johnny appears, the ranger shoots him, temporarily stopping his rampage. Sadly for the ranger, Colt isn't terribly helpful here. Chris gets a pass because she needs to remove the locket from around her neck. But instead of successfully tying up Johnny before he can return to his murderous unlife, the ranger is paralyzed by Johnny breaking his spine. Colt and Chris escape, while Johnny spends several minutes turning on a log splitter, cutting off the ranger's arm. But then, since he's paralyzed and thus can't feel it, Johnny simply cuts his head off with the machine and leaves to continue pursuing his quarry. When he finds the couple, Colt attempts to distract Johnny. He was hoping to blow him up with gasoline in some kind of clever trap, but instead, Johnny kills Colt with his trusty axe, and Chris, finally getting the locket off, leaves it on the gas canister and runs into the dark forest. After running all night, and at one point injuring her leg, Chris stops a passing car on a dirt road, and she's picked up by a woman who starts driving to the hospital. To keep Chris conscious, she talks about her brother, who was mauled by a bear in these very woods years ago, but managed to survive. Of course, Chris doesn't know for sure that any of this is true, and the final moments of this movie are Chris, fearful that Johnny is about to lurch out of the woods, begging the woman to keep going. She has stopped to put a tourniquet on Chris's leg. Maybe it's because Chris is black and the woman is white, but I was also concerned that this woman was going to betray our final girl. Her convenient arrival had major Mrs. Voorhees vibes, if you catch my drift. But the movie ends with Johnny absent, and the locket gone from the gas canister, so perhaps he returned to his makeshift tomb. This film is gory, but also full of beautiful forests and skies at sunset. It's not quite like any slasher movie I've ever seen. The idea that sex equals death is absent here, as is the idea that using drugs or drinking will also seal your doom. Johnny is instead more like a force of nature, a steady, unstoppable killer who, much like a forest fire, just keeps coming back even when it seems it's died down. No matter what choices you make, good or bad, if you get too close to his path of destruction, you're dead. I really enjoyed this movie, and if you're in the mood for an almost contemplative slasher film, maybe you will too. I give this 3 antique weapons out of 4. Our book this month is My Favorite Thing is Monsters by Emile Ferris, a graphic novel magnum opus. Volume 2 just came out a few weeks ago, but I'll only be discussing Volume 1 here, since there's plenty to cover. Karen Reyes lives in Chicago with her mother and older brother, Dees. That's what she calls him, but his real name is Diego. They reside in a basement apartment, and their already precarious existence feels even more uncertain when an upstairs neighbor is found dead. Anke Silverberg, a beautiful woman who survived the Holocaust, is someone whose mystery and sorrow fascinated Karen, so she sets out to discover how Anke really died. Given the strange circumstances of her demise, murder seems like more than just a possibility. But who would kill Anke? And what if the culprit is someone Karen knows and loves? Drawing on Karen's love of monster movies and horror comics, these books are full of ink drawings on lined paper, the idea being that Karen is recording and illustrating her experiences. When her mother is diagnosed with cancer, and given that the story is taking place in 1968, the turbulent world around Karen forces her to ask some tough questions. How well does she know her older brother, Dees? If monsters are real, and Karen knows they are, why won't some creature of the night come to her and bite her, change her, or at least change her dying mother into some immortal thing? Throughout the book, Karen listens to tapes recorded by Anke before her death. In these recordings, she talks about her life growing up and reveals how she escaped Nazi Germany. Anke's voice on cassette tapes tells Karen about her early life, and even in flashbacks, she's drawn in shades of blue and purple, a ghost that haunts the narrative long after her death. After nearly being sexually assaulted by boys from school, Karen and her friend Franklin visit the Art Institute, perhaps Karen's favorite place on Earth. She and Dees have a way of not just looking at the paintings, but rather traveling inside them to see what your eyes can barely glimpse. Dees, like Karen, is an artist, and it seems to her that he relates to monsters because he killed someone once. He won't talk about this, though, or the fact that their shared father might try and take Karen away after their mother dies, if Dees is drafted and sent to Vietnam. For Karen, she feels like a monster and longs for a bite to cement her status, because she likes girls. Dees tells her that he loves her no matter what, but he also warns her that he doesn't have the machine gun he'd need to protect her from people so violently homophobic that they might hurt Karen if they knew her secret. Volume 1 ends on a cliffhanger. After Karen and Dees' mother dies, Karen goes to a place called Green Island in a dream and meets Victor, a man who says he's her brother and who looks identical to Dees. Near the end of Volume 1, Karen writes, "I guess that's the difference. A good monster gives somebody a fright because they're weird-looking and fangy, a fact that is beyond their control. But bad monsters are all about control. They want the whole world to be scared so that bad monsters can call the shots." This graphic novel is brilliant and beautiful, and it also has moments where it's hard to read. Karen suffers in silence many times, even after she is nearly raped, because she suspects Dees will kill the boys who tried to hurt her. She loves her mother, but the reality of her death feels distant until it arrives. She seems to be getting better, but Dees reveals that no, she's only been taking more painkillers. And what about Anke? Discovering the truth of what happened to her is important to Karen, but it's deeply frightening too, because Karen fears the killer is a member of her own family. If you love horror, both the monster movie aesthetic variety and the real-life terrors of childhood, check out these books. As the saying goes, who you were, who you are, and who you will be are 3 different people. Identity is, like life, a journey rather than a destination. Just as a novel can change dramatically in its final pages, or a movie can become something new in its final moments, building identity doesn't stop until you do. It can be the work of a lifetime, and as chaotic as the world can be, knowing who you are or trying to learn, can be a great comfort. No, it won't save you from the horrors of life, but identity means that you are more than the things that happen to you. In stories and in people, identity is something intrinsic, something that helps and hurts and informs how the world sees you and how you see the world. It's messy and complicated and scary, but who would you be without it? Thanks for listening, and I'll be back again soon with another terrifying trio.